G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and today I'm doing a Let's Draw video, which is where I take the request from the Twitch chat, put it to the vote, and the winning vote of the character I'm drawing today is Venom, which was requested by Pyrobird. Venom is an alien symbiote character thing from the Spider-Man series, and I really like his aesthetic. He's got this really gritty, visceral, alien but epic aesthetic, so it's going to be really fun to do. And in doing Venom, to create a lot of impact and really emphasize the beastly aspects of this character, I'm going to be doing a profile shot of like a bust shot, so kind of from the shoulders up, and try and make it look as powerful and epic as possible. So first things first, we block out the silhouette of Venom. Because we're going to be doing a profile shot, we're going to first figure out what his head will look like from the side. And I'm going to be going for a really beastly, animalistic looking character here. So I'm not going to go with normal head proportions. I'm going to have the mouth as open as I can possibly justify to show these gnarly teeth sticking out. And then once I'm fairly happy with the silhouette of the character, I start to sketch in some of the details, making changes as I need to, focusing on the gritty nature of things like the teeth, the eyes. And I tend to find in general it's really good to work with really hard edges for rounded aspects. So for instance, the back of the head might normally be round, or the jaw or the tongue, rather than following a round edge, having really blocky edges and solid lines that are a little more jagged, add a stylistic flair to the piece and take away a softness that might lower the impact when we're going for something that's much more intense. When drawing the saliva from Venom's tongue and mouth, basically what I do is draw vertical lines going down and then merging into little droplets at the end. Another little trick to make it look extra slimy is to have two angled lines connecting to that vertical droplet, which make it look like a little bit of a Y shape. And sometimes you can connect that from, say, the tongue to the mouth, just that little Y shape, and that helps make it look extra slimy. Every now and then have a single drop that is falling, but don't have too many of those as it may look a little comical. Have it more about the hanging drops than the actual droplets. Okay, so I'm happy with how Venom looks at the moment, so I'm now ready to go on to line work, and I want to keep this really gritty look. So similar to my Wendigo video that I did last week, I'm going to start off with my 0.3 and 0.1 and keep the focus on the silhouette and add a lot of grit, add a lot of cross-hatching, and add a lot of line shading that goes in at different angles to add a lot of grit to the piece as well, and really focus on keeping that messiness. But in areas like the saliva and the tongue, I won't be doing too much cross-hatching or anything like that because it's going to have a different texture. So I'm actually going to keep most of the intense shading and the really messy look on the skin of the character, and the tongue and eyes I'll sort of keep separate from that. I really want to focus on keeping the beastie nature of this piece intact, so I'm really keeping my lines sharp and solid, really focusing on the silhouette of the piece. You'll also notice I'm only doing the outline of the tongue. I'm going to come back later with my 0.1 to do the thin drool of the tongue, which will make it look like a different layer of texture. It'll make it look like the saliva is a separate entity to the tongue itself. Throughout the rest of the piece, focusing on that silhouette, really strong, sharp lines, and then once I've finished putting together the basic piece itself, I'm then ready to go through with my 0.1, my very, very fine liner, and add in the shadow areas, keeping my cross-hatching really strong wherever there is solid shadow, such as in the mouth and in some areas at the back or bottom of the jaw and head. But then in other areas where I just want to add general shading, I just use line shading, but I also vary the direction of the lines, and this helps emphasize the unpredictable nature of this character and the slightly messy but visceral feeling of the piece. I think I like the word visceral. I'm just going to keep saying visceral. Visceral, visceral, visceral. Visceral. Alright, and I'm happy with how this has turned out. It's nice and visceral. And now we're ready for some color. So I'm going to be coloring in this piece with Copic markers. Copic Australia is the sponsor of my Let's Draw videos. They're an alcohol-based marker which can really create some cool blending effects. So I'm going to be working with my Copic markers, and I'm going to be using some testing paper to find a color scheme that I'm happy with for this character. So in trying to find my Venom color palette, I start mixing in various cool grays with a couple of blues to find that Venom tint that I think will work. And then I also play with various skin tone-ish, pinkish, lipstickish hues for what will be the tongue color. So I start off the colors of my piece working with the gray tones of the skin color from C6 to C10, making sure to leave areas highlighted so I can come back later and add some shading in my various blues, and sometimes I sort of do blending as I go, especially in the more shadowed areas. Then when I'm ready to add my blues, I start off by adding the lighter blue colors from Baby Blue B12 to Sky B24, and then later in the most dark areas and the areas I really want some intense saturation, I add B18 Lapis Lazuli. I've been careful throughout creating the skin tone of this piece to not overdo the blue, but we need to keep some interest, and having just blacks and greys will be too desaturated and boring. So I've made sure to use blues somewhat sparingly, but in specific directions, and working with the highlighted areas of the piece to sort of balance it out. For the teeth of Venom, I go with E40 Brick White as the base, and then add some E43 Dull Ivory to add a nice, dirty, decaying look. And then around the eyes, I want to be a little more subtle. I'm just going to use Y00 around the very edges and N1 Neutral Grey to sort of soften out the gradient of the eye color. Alright, so I'm starting to get to the point where the piece is finishing up, but there are a couple of things I really want to do to add some finishing touches, and one is add some highlights with my white pen. I'm using the white pen to add highlights to areas to add a wetness, so anywhere in the mouth or on the tongue where in particular it's in contact with a source of light, it's going to make it look nice and wet. And the very, very last thing I want to do is go back to my 0.3 fine liner and add a very slightly thicker outline to the silhouette of the piece. And I really don't want to overdo this. I want to keep some fine, thin line work throughout, but I'm just basically reinforcing it so it doesn't get lost in the detail and the chaos of the piece. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, that is how I wrap up the piece. You can see how just those two little things, some slight highlights in the wet areas and a slightly reinforced silhouette around the piece, can really solidify and add that final kick in the pants to your piece. Kick in the pants? Whatever, it'll do. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Venom, for being lovely. Just give me a little lick. Anyways, as usual, I dedicate the piece to whoever suggested it in Twitch chat before all the voting happened, and this will be dedicated to Pyrobird, so I will simply sign and dedicate to Pyrobird. Thanks for watching. Make sure to join future streams by clicking the link on the screen and in the description, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you later.